Chapter 5. The Potions Master. Neville Longbottom stirred in his bed, his eyes fluttering open as the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains of his dormitory in Gryffindor Tower. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, he sat up slowly, blinking away the remnants of a strange dream involving flying teapots and dancing gnomes. With a yawn, Neville swung his legs over the side of the bed and stretched, feeling the stiffness of a night's rest in the cozy four-poster bed. He glanced around the dormitory, the other beds neatly made, his fellow Gryffindors still lost in their dreams. Pushing back the covers, Neville got to his feet and made his way to the bathroom to freshen up before his first day of lessons at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The stone floors were cool beneath his bare feet as he washed his face and brushed his teeth, the sounds of the castle waking up echoing through the corridors. Dressed in his Hogwarts robes, Neville made his way down the spiral staircase from the dormitory, his footsteps echoing in the empty tower. The castle was a maze of twisting corridors and moving staircases, a magical place that seemed to have a life of its own. Navigating his way through the shifting halls, Neville finally reached the Great Hall, where the smell of breakfast wafted through the air, mingling with the chatter of students and the fluttering of owls delivering morning post. Taking a seat at the Gryffindor table, Neville helped himself to a plate of scrambled eggs and toast, his stomach fluttering with a mix of nerves and excitement for the day ahead. He chatted with his housemates, exchanging stories of summer adventures and wondering aloud about the mysteries that awaited them in their classrooms. Herbology was Neville's favourite class. 3 times a week, he made his way to the greenhouses behind the castle, where the air was thick with the scent of nature. Professor Sprout, a cheerful and plump witch, guided them through the care of magical plants and fungi, teaching them their properties and practical uses. Neville found a sense of peace in the greenhouses, surrounded by the vibrant greenery and the gentle rustling of leaves. He had a knack for herbology, a talent for nurturing and understanding the needs of the magical plants they studied. It was a subject that spoke to him in a way that others did not, a connection to the natural world that he cherished. In the evening, Neville sat at his desk in the dimly lit astronomy tower, his eyes fixed on the night sky through his telescope. The twinkling stars seemed to dance before his eyes, each one holding a secret and a story waiting to be discovered. Professor Sinistra's voice droned on in the background, explaining the movements of the planets and the constellations that dotted the heavens. Wednesday nights were one of Neville's favourite time of the week. There was something magical about studying the night skies, about losing himself in the vastness of space and feeling a sense of wonder and awe at the universe beyond. He eagerly took notes, his hand moving swiftly across the parchment as he tried to commit the names of the stars to memory. Then there was a history of magic. Professor Binns droned on about centuries-old wizards and long-forgotten battles. The ghostly professor floated through the air, his voice a monotonous drone that seemed to lull Neville into a state of half-sleep. History of Magic was easily the most boring class at Hogwarts, a never-ending parade of names and dates that blurred together in Neville's mind. Professor Binns had a unique teaching style, considering he was the only ghostly professor at Hogwarts. Legend had it that he had fallen asleep in front of the staff room fire one night and simply continued teaching as a ghost the next morning, leaving his body behind. Neville often found himself struggling to stay awake during History of Magic, his mind wandering to more exciting subjects like herbology and astronomy. In contrast to the dullness of History of Magic, Charms class with Professor Flitwick was a delightful experience for Neville. The tiny wizard, who had to stand on a pile of books to see over his desk, exuded energy and enthusiasm for the subject. Neville admired Professor Flitwick's passion for teaching and his ability to make even the most mundane spells come alive with his animated demonstrations. One of Neville's favourite moments in Charms class was during his first lesson when Professor Flitwick was taking attendance. As he reached Harry Potter's name, the excitable professor let out an enthusiastic squeak and toppled out of sight, much to Neville's amusement. During Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration lesson, Neville felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The stern professor stood before them, her sharp gaze sweeping over the students as she began her introduction to one of the most complex branches of magic. Transfiguration is some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn at Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall's voice was firm and uncompromising. Anyone messing around in my class will leave and not come back. You have been warned. Neville swallowed nervously, his eyes fixed on the professor as she demonstrated her skill by effortlessly transforming her desk into a pig and back again. The class erupted into whispers of amazement and admiration, eager to try their hand at such powerful magic. As the lesson progressed, Professor McGonagall guided them through the basics of transfiguration, emphasizing the importance of focus, precision, and control. Neville furiously scribbled down notes, trying to absorb as much information as he could. He watched in awe as Hermione Granger, always a standout student, successfully transfigured her match into a gleaming silver needle. By the end of the lesson, Neville found himself struggling with the delicate art of transfiguration. His match remained stubbornly unchanged, despite his best efforts. After lunch, Neville sat eagerly in the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom as Professor Quirrell began his first lesson. The classroom was filled with whispers and excitement as students waited to see what magical knowledge awaited them in this highly anticipated class. However, as the lesson unfolded, it quickly became apparent that Professor Quirrell's teaching style was unconventional, to say the least. The strong smell of garlic that permeated the classroom caused some students to wrinkle their noses in confusion. Rumors quickly spread among the students that the garlic was meant to ward off a vampire that Quirrell had encountered in Romania, leading to amused glances exchanged between classmates. Adding to the intrigue was Professor Quirrell's peculiar turban, which he claimed was a gift from an African prince in gratitude for Quirrell's assistance in vanquishing a troublesome zombie. The students listened with skepticism, unsure whether to believe the fantastical tale. When pressed for details about the zombie encounter by an eager Seamus Finnegan, Professor Quirrell's response was evasive, diverting the conversation to mundane topics like the weather. Neville, though initially excited for his Defense Against the Dark Arts class, couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment at the lackluster start. He had hoped to learn powerful defensive spells and techniques to protect himself and his friends from dark forces, but Quirrell's odd behavior and questionable stories left him feeling uncertain. As the lesson came to a close, Neville resolved to approach the subject with an open mind and a readiness to learn, despite the eccentricities of his new professor. Despite his genuine enjoyment of most subjects, Potions class with Professor Snape posed a significant hurdle for Neville. His lack of natural talent in the subject and the intimidating presence of the Potions Master made each lesson in the dimly lit dungeons a daunting experience. Neville's struggles in potions were compounded by Snape's favoritism towards students from his own house, Slytherin, and his tendency to single out and belittle those who found the subject challenging. Neville, with his nervous disposition and tendency to make mistakes, quickly became an easy target for Snape's sharp tongue and harsh criticisms. During the first ever potions lesson, Professor Snape swept into the room with all the grace of a stalking panther, his black robes billowing behind him. Neville couldn't help but flinch as the potions master's cold voice read at the register. Like Flitwick, when Harry's name came up, he paused. "Ah, yes, Mr. Potter, our new celebrity." Draco Malfoy and his cronies, Crabbe and Goyle, couldn't contain their sniggers, their faces twisted in malicious amusement. Snape continued with the roll call, his voice dripping with disdain as he called out each name. Neville tried to make himself as inconspicuous as possible, hoping beyond hope that he wouldn't draw Snape's attention. Finally, Snape finished calling the names and turned his gaze back to the class. Neville felt a shiver run down his spine as Snape's dark, empty eyes met his own. It was as if those eyes could see right through him, straight into his deepest fears and insecurities. In that moment, Neville understood why Snape was so feared and disliked among the students. His presence was suffocating, his words cutting like a whip. "You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion-making." Snape's words floated through the air like a haunting melody, captivating the attention of every student in the room. "As there is little foolish wand-waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic." Snape continued, his dark eyes glinting with a mixture of pride and challenge. The air in the room seemed to thicken with anticipation as he delved into the intricacies of potion-making, painting a vivid picture of the beauty and power that lay within the simmering cauldrons. Neville's gaze flickered to his classmates, noticing the varying reactions to Snape's words. Harry and Ron shared a look of bemusement, their eyebrows raised in silent communication. Hermione Granger, always eager to prove herself, sat on the edge of her seat, her eyes shining with determination. "The delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, ensnaring the senses." Snape's voice took on a hypnotic quality, weaving a spell of fascination around his students. "I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stop a death, if you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach." The room fell into a heavy silence as Snape's speech came to an end, the weight of his words lingering in the air like a potent potion waiting to be brewed. "Potter!" Snape's voice was sharp, commanding attention. "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Neville watched as Harry exchanged a puzzled look with Ron, both of them appearing just as lost as he felt. Hermione's hand shot up with lightning speed, her eagerness to answer the question evident in the determined set of her jaw. I don't know, sir." Harry's voice held a note of uncertainty, his admission met with a sneer from Snape. "How very disappointing. Clearly, fame isn't everything." Snape's words dripped with scorn as he dismissed Hermione's raised hand without a second glance. The tension in the room seemed to thicken as Snape pressed on, directing his next question at Harry. "Potter, where would you look if I told you to find me a Bezoar?" Hermione's hand shot up once more. Neville felt a surge of frustration on Harry's behalf as the trio of Slytherins, Malfoy, Crabbe and Goyle erupted into laughter, their mocking gazes fixed on Harry's predicament. "I don't know, sir." Harry's response was tinged with a sense of defeat, his eyes carefully avoiding the taunting stares of his Slytherin classmates. "Thought you wouldn't open a book before coming, eh, Potter?" Neville's heart went out to Harry. Snape must have known Harry only found out he was going to Hogwarts the day before the start of term, especially since Dumbledore has sent Hagrid to get Harry. What Snape was doing was nothing but cruel. But why? Harry hadn't done anything. It was their first lesson after all. Maybe it was because Harry wasn't sorted into Slytherin and was sorted into the rival house instead. Whatever the reason, Neville could sense it was a lot deeper than just being an ordinary Gryffindor student. Snape's gaze remained fixed on Harry, his next question hanging in the air like a challenge.
What is the difference, Potter, between monkshood and wolfsbane?
Snape's words seemed to echo in the cavernous classroom. Hermione's hand shot up. Neville watched as she stood up, her determination to answer the question evident in every line of her posture. I don't know, sir, but I think Hermione does, though. Why don't you ask her? Few scattered laughs rippled through the classroom, breaking the heavy silence that had settled over them. Snape's displeasure was evident, his voice cutting through the room like a whip as he snapped at Hermione Granger to sit down. The focus of Snape's attention shifted back to Harry, his tone dripping with condescension as he imparted his knowledge.
For your information, Potter, asphodel and wormwood make a sleeping potion so powerful it is known as the draught of living death. A bezoar is a stone taken from the stomach of a goat, and it will save you from most poisons. As for monkshood and wolfsbane, they are the same plant, which also goes by the name of aconite. Well, why aren't you all copying that down?
Neville hurried to catch up, his quill flying across the parchment as he transcribed Snape's words.
And a point will be taken from Gryffindor House for your cheek, Potter,
Snape remarked. Things only got worse from there. Neville's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as he stared in shock at the twisted, melted remains of Seamus's cauldron. How had he managed to turn a simple brewing task into such a disaster? The once sturdy cauldron now resembled a deformed metal sculpture, a testament to his unparalleled talent for mishaps. His heart raced as he watched in horror as the potion he had unwittingly unleashed seeped across the stone floor like a malevolent creature on the prowl. The acrid scent of the potion filled the air, a harsh reminder of his failure. Students' cries of pain echoed in his ears as the potion burned holes through their shoes, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Panic gripped him as he realized the extent of the chaos he had caused. Within seconds, the entire class was on their stools, a sea of fearful faces staring back at him. Neville's palms grew sweaty as he desperately searched for a way to undo the mess he had made. But it was too late. The damage was done, and he could do nothing but watch in horror as the situation spiraled out of control. The worst, however, was yet to come. As he stood frozen in place, the cauldron collapsed, drenching him from head to toe in the potion. A searing pain shot through his body as the acidic liquid ate into his skin, leaving angry red boils springing up all over his arms and legs like a cruel reminder of his incompetence. Every movement sent waves of agony through him, and he couldn't help but let out a pained moan as he felt the burns intensify. Feeling the weight of his classmates' stares boring into him, Neville wished more than anything to disappear.
Idiot boy,
snarled Snape, clearing the spilled potion away with one wave of his wand.
I suppose you added the porcupine quills before taking the cauldron off the fire?
Neville whimpered as boils started to pop up all over his nose.
Take him up to the hospital wing.
Snape snapped at Seamus. Seamus carefully guided Neville through the winding corridors of Hogwarts. Neville winced with each step, his skin tingling with pain as the boils seemed to pulse and grow larger. As they reached the hospital wing, Neville's eyes widened in awe at the rows of neat beds, the smell of medicinal herbs hanging in the air. It was his first time seeing the infirmary, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of comfort wash over him despite the pain. Madame Pomfrey bustled over, her no-nonsense demeanour softened by a kind smile that somewhat reminded Neville of a younger version of his grandmother. She thanked Seamus for bringing Neville in and assured him that he could leave. Seamus hesitated for a moment before nodding and then quietly slipped out of the room. Turning her attention to Neville, Madame Pomfrey asked gently, Now, what seems to be the trouble, dear? Neville recounted the mishap in potions class, explaining Snape's accusation about the porcupine quills. Madame Pomfrey listened attentively, her expression understanding. "Oh, dear boy, don't worry. It's a common mistake." With practiced hands, Madame Pomfrey began to treat Neville's boils, applying soothing ointments and potions to ease the pain and reduce the swelling. As she worked, she chatted cheerfully about previous cases she had seen, trying to put Neville at ease. After what seemed like an eternity, Neville's boils had finally begun to recede, leaving behind faint marks on his skin. Madame Pomfrey pronounced him fit to return to the Gryffindor common room to rest, advising him to take it easy for the rest of the day. Neville trudged wearily back to the Gryffindor common room, feeling drained and overwhelmed by the events of the day. As he approached the portrait of the fat lady, he was relieved to see Seamus and Dean waiting for him. "Just wanted to make sure you got back okay," Seamus said with a reassuring smile, while Dean added, "You've had a stressful day, and we know how you can be with the password, so we thought we'd wait outside for you." Grateful for his friend's thoughtfulness, Neville managed a small smile before they entered the common room together. Once inside, Neville's exhaustion hit him like a wave, and he collapsed onto his bed with a heavy sigh. Seamus, ever the curious one, spotted a copy of the Daily Prophet lying on his bed and picked it up. "Hey guys, listen to this," he exclaimed, drawing Neville and Dean's attention. "Investigations continue into the break-in at Gringotts on the 31st of July, widely believed to be the work of dark wizards or witches unknown," he continued, quoting the Gringotts spokesgoblin. "But we're not telling you what was in there, so keep your noses out if you know what's good for you." Neville and Dean exchanged shocked glances, their minds racing with the implications of the news. Neville sat up from his bed, his expression a mix of disbelief and concern. "Someone broke into Gringotts? But that can't be right. My Gran always says it's impossible," he exclaimed. Dean furrowed his brow, deep in thought as he peered behind Seamus's shoulder to read the article. "But they didn't take anything, though. It had been emptied that day. Maybe that's why it was easy." He pondered out loud. Seamus interjected, "But Gringotts is supposed to be completely impossible to even break into. They are lucky nothing got taken, but boy, is it interesting, especially how they won't say what's missing." Three friends fell into a hushed discussion, their voices low as they tried to make sense of the mysterious break-in at the highly secure Wizarding Bank. Neville listened intently to his friends' words, feeling a sense of exhaustion wash over him. The events of the day, from the disastrous potions class to the unsettling news about Gringotts, had taken a toll on him. His mind felt foggy and his body ached with fatigue. Seamus and Dean exchanged a knowing glance, silently acknowledging Neville's need for rest. They continued their conversation in subdued tones, mindful not to disturb their sleeping friend.